Hello, class. We have just gone over the introduction for Unit 3. Now we're going to talk about the introduction for Chapter 7. This chapter will be Commerce and Culture from 500 to 1500. Most of this chapter is going to talk about trade. Pretty much all of this chapter talk about trade. So we want to understand, why did people trade? Well, people traded because they lived in different ecological zones, which led to a natural uneven distribution of goods and resources. So if you think about it, some people had things on one area, some people had other things in other areas. So now you start to think about why these trades need to take place. We see that there was an early monopolization of certain goods. And if, like, you play the game Monopoly, your goal is to have all of the land. Well, some of these people had all of the goods or a certain good, and other people wanted those goods. So trade became very important to be able to make these things happen. Some of the monopolies that took place, you had a monopoly on silk in China and certain spices in Southeast Asia. And so it came to be like, I want what you have. Do you want what I have? So that's where trade kind of rose from. And when we think about this trading system, we want to think about this trading system globally. And when you think about globally, we're pretty much talking about Afro-Eurasia, Africa, Europe, Asia. And this is where the long-distance trade starts to come about. So let's think about trade from 500 to 1500. We know that from the early civilizations we talked about, we knew that Mesopotamia traded with Egypt, but they traded and they were in close proximity to each other. We're talking about long distance trade. We're talking about trade that's going all the way across certain continents and how those things took place. So we start to see during this time period, long distance trade began to develop. And one thing that we understand, and you need to understand, is this trade shaped different cultures and society. And understand also, this trade was mostly indirect. And when we talk about being indirect, we talk about, for example, a good starts from China and it's going all the way over to the Mediterranean, but the people who own the good in the beginning didn't go all the way to the Mediterranean. You think about it like a relay race, like the picture shows. These goods would travel and it would just change hands as it went from east to west or from west to east. So in essence, the goods traveled much farther than the merchants did. Now we want to talk about what was the significance or the importance of trade. Well, trade had significances on different levels. First, we're going to talk about economic differences or economic significance. One thing, it altered the consumption. It made people eat a little bit differently or live a little bit differently. For example, you see in West Africa, now they were able to get salt to flavor and preserve their food, where they once didn't have it. So because of trade, now they have something new and something that would be able to help them in their everyday life. Also, what it did, it changed the day-to-day lives of individuals. For example, you have trade specialization. Now the people were it led to less self-sufficiency and more dependency. So what it's pretty much saying is people didn't have to do everything themselves, but yet and still they had to depend on others for some of the things that they wanted. There was also a social significance of trade. We see that traders became their own social group. So we know that in China, you saw from your last in your last unit, the merchants were not very highly thought of, and they were viewed suspiciously, like they were cheating people because they weren't making money, or they were making money without making the goods. So people didn't trust a lot of the merchants in certain parts of the world. Also, trade became a means of social mobility. So they believed that if you had money, you could have land, and then you have power and status because you have that money and or that land. So people were moving up and down the social ladder because they had these, they were traders, they were merchants, they were able to do things that other people couldn't. And then trade was used by elite groups to distinguish themselves from the common people. So trade was expensive just depending on what was being traded. So those people who were high in society or had a lot of money or had a lot of wealth, they were able to afford those luxury goods, such as the silk that came all the way from China or the ivory that came from Africa, going to the east. So if you had money, you could afford it, and that kind of set you apart from the common people. Now let's think about the significance of trade on a political scale. Trade helped people control and tax trade, and it motivated the creation of states and kingdoms. So when a trade route went through your certain area, your kingdom or your state or your empire, you could tax that trade. You could tax those traders. You could tax those people. And that helped your economic situation, and then also it helped your political situation because now you become more powerful. You control those trade routes. You tax those trade routes. Now you can grow your state or grow your kingdom. Also, this wealth from this trade sustained these states and the kingdoms, and it facilitated their growth. It helped them to grow. So all of these things helped these states or these empires get larger and show their, and they were able to show their dominance in whatever region they were, the trade route was going through. So what other things? We always talk about goods being traded, and let's think about what else was traded during this time period. Well, first thing that we're going to see in this chapter, you see religious ideas being traded. We'll talk about Buddhism, and we'll talk about Christianity, and we'll talk about Hinduism. And then you're going to see the new religion of Islam being traded and also spread throughout these trade routes. Another thing that you're going to see are technological innovations. These new ways of doing things, such as being able to travel, better ways of travel, new ships, new overland travel, caravans, carts, different things like that, are going to help the trade come about. And all of this technology is going to spread throughout Eurasia. One thing that was not good as far as trade was concerned was these disease-bearing germs. You'll see in the next chapter, or this chapter actually, dealing with how the plague may have spread, how it goes from east to west. And because one thing that you think about, and we talk about cultural diffusion a lot, when you think about what happens when people who have never met come in contact with each other, these things are going to be spread. These things are going to go. Sometimes they're going to be good things. Sometimes they're not going to be so good. And then lastly, we see the spread of plants and animals. We'll see how different plants that were brought up in the East now become cultivated in the West, just spreading those ideas, spreading that knowledge about the plants and the animals and things like that. The camel, like it shows in the picture, going from one part of the world to the other. These caravans, and seeing how the goods were moved from one place to another, and domesticating different types of animals for trade. This brings us to an end of our introductory portion of chapter 7. You'll see a lot of things. You're going to see how goods were traded over the Silk Roads. We'll talk about how goods were traded over water, and we'll talk about how goods were traded over the desert. So get yourself ready. Make sure that you're ready to go into all of these. You'll have a part about each one, and be ready to talk about those things as we go through the chapter.